And our next guest, thanks to Cole Jackson, is a big one. Mitchell Schwartz, of course, Super Bowl champion, 4-time All-Pro. You probably knew him from his time with the Kansas City Chiefs. He was drafted in the second round, 37th overall by Cleveland back in 2012, and of course plays college football at California. Mitch is inside the collective tonight on a Tuesday, and what better night to have you on after what we watched last night. We will transition to that at some point, but I thought we could start with, first of all, welcoming you in first and foremost. I'm Bobby, Jeff Zrebeck of The Athletic. You know Cole, obviously, and I'm just curious what you think that the state of the offensive line is in 2025 league-wide in general terms.
Ooh, going with the big one right off the bat. That's a tricky one. I mean, it does seem like it's down across the board for a variety of reasons, honestly. It seems like as obviously things have shifted, it's gone a little bit more towards the run and better efficiency and more of an emphasis the past few years to combat some of the way the defenses are playing. We haven't really seen the shift of the O-line from like the pass heavy, this is more difficult, into, well, now things are getting a little bit easier. We've kind of seen the Shanahan-McVay scheme, aside from really McVay specifically, that leans into the outside zone, have been a little less good in the pass side, shall we say. So as more of those guys are getting throughout the league, I think we're seeing a little bit of a degradation in terms of offensive line play, because the same way we evaluate quarterbacks, same way Lamar was incorrectly evaluated for a while, that what are you going to look like on 3rd and 8? What are you going to look like in a critical situation in a 2-minute drive? Well, that's really the barometer to me for offensive line play. What's it going to look like on 3rd and 8 when Michael Parsons is against you, or Myles Garrett, or these other freaks? How are you going to block them when you don't have the help, or when everyone knows it's going to be a pass? And I think that as the snapshot of how good is your offensive line, how good are the individual linemen, I think across the board it's not quite as good as it used to be.
Mitch, thanks for joining us. Around these parts, most fans are convinced that the Ravens aren't going to win anything with this current offensive line. When you watch the group, what do you see? How do you evaluate their group?
Yeah, it's tough because the O-line's usually like the 1 weak link can kind of bring things out in an offensive line. And so on any given play, this is where, when offenses in general feel disjointed, Kansas City's had a lot of experience with that the last few years that Baltimore has not had. Even as bad as it feels, for you guys being 1-2, and you're still putting up 30+ points a game. Like, the offense is still scoring, the ball's still moving, things still feel crisp. I mean, I hate getting into like the 1 or 2 bad plays a game, but you can argue a couple of Derrick Henry fumbles go another direction, and it changes, and a couple outcomes of games, and now you're looking at 3-0 and feeling, hey, we're 3-0. We've got, this thing's not as good as we want it to be, but we're doing pretty good. So yeah, from that perspective, like, your feeling as a player, if you have 10 good plays, 1 bad play, you feel really bummed about that. Like, yeah, for the most part, I'm playing pretty good. And so if everyone on your offense or everyone on your O-line is mostly having good plays, but there's 1 bad play here or there, everyone individually feels like, I'm mostly doing my part. There's a couple plays I want back, but I'm doing pretty good. Usually the O-line isn't all losing in unison. So like it's this tough feeling that not understanding why it's not coming together on the field when guys are having one-off plays here and there, and they're all separate. They're not all happening at the same time. So I think it's a little bit of that, a little bit of the guys you're going up against. I mean, I thought the tackles mostly were doing a pretty good job until you go up against Miles and you go up against Hutchinson. And I was surprised how often Hutch was able to win inside last night. That was a bit of a surprise for me, especially against some chip looks or looks where you might expect him to go through or inside. So there are those things that are a little bit weird, but not to, I think, the standard of what Baltimore's used to, not to what the standard of the expectation is. But I don't think a cause for concern or a reason for panic at this point.
Yeah, Mitch, it's always great to hear from players because you get the actual perspective of, what it was like to be in a locker room and go through the highs and lows of an NFL season. Whereas, fans, it's, either it was a bad win or a bad loss. And, there's so much doom and gloom, especially, with teams like Kansas City and Baltimore that are kind of constantly in contention. The expectations are sky high. So from the player's perspective, how do you kind of what kind of brings everyone together when, the mood is getting low? And you could argue that both, Kansas City and Baltimore are in similar spots right now where, maybe it's the defense, letting Baltimore down versus the offense in Kansas City. But, what's that? Is it the voices, the leadership group in the room? Is it the coaching? Like, from your perspective, what is that kind of gel factor?
Yeah, it's usually not as much the coaches, because for these two teams specifically, when there's a built-in culture, like the coach has already set that. He doesn't need to get up there and get a 15-minute team meeting on Wednesday to say, hey guys, we need to do better. Like, he might address that for a minute or two, and everyone knows that's coming. He gets his point across and move on to the next thing. The players are kind of telling each other throughout the game, hey, let's pick it up, let's go. Offensive line-wise, you're very aware of your quarterback. Even if he's running into a few sacks, you're very aware if your quarterback is taking 6 or 7 sacks, and you know that you need to play better as a unit. So there's that, like, self-policing during the game, self-policing after when you're watching film the next day. A little bit from the coaches, obviously, but that's the beauty of being on a really good team, is the expectations are so high, and you're so used to having performed a certain way that when it looks, 80% of what it's supposed to, again, still scoring 30+ points a game, it feels awful and it feels like the world's ending. And it's nice that players have that personal accountability to know that that's not good enough, that scoring the points isn't good enough, and yeah, we're a couple fumbles away. Well, let's win by 25 like we used to, so that we can afford the fumble or two, we can afford the turnover or two. So I think that's the overriding sentiment is they've all been successful enough, and the culture's already set that there doesn't have to be that communication as much. Now, obviously, they're going to have some vocal leaders, obviously Roquan on defense and guys on offense leading the charge. Every team has that, but there's just so much more of a built-in accountability to yourself, to each other, that it doesn't have to be, players only meeting or speeches or all those things, which, after a while can get a little bit annoying, to be honest.